Good evening. I am Elayne Arrington, and we are about to view a film about the struggles and conquests of three African-American female mathematicians who served as computers and engineers at the National Aeronautics Space Agency, or NASA, in the Mercury mission for putting an American into space. Now, after having viewed this film, Mr. Robert Hill, former vice chancellor at the University of Pittsburgh, in a February 9th Post-Gazette article, identified me as one of Pittsburgh's own hidden figures because of parallels. Yeah, it was because of parallels between the story of these women and my own story, and I have had them pass out copies of that article just in case you have not seen it. Well, the film features three women, Katherine Coleman Goebel Johnson, who is still alive, Mary Winston Jackson, who died in 2005, and Dorothy Johnson Vaughn, who died in 2008. It chronicles their story from 1961 to 1962. Specifically, their story highlights three things. April 12, 1961, when the Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit the Earth. May 5th, 1961, when Alan Shepard became the first American in space by partially orbiting the Earth, and February 20th, 1962, when John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth. My story begins in 1957. For me, 1957 was quite a year. Internationally, on October 4th, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite to orbit the Earth, inaugurating the space age. Nationally, federal troops were sent to Arkansas, where Governor Orville Faubus attempted to prevent the Little Rock Nine from integrating Central High School. And after Senator Strom Thurmond staged his record one-person filibuster trying to prevent it, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1957, the first civil rights legislation passed in the United States since Reconstruction. At the University of Pittsburgh, Edward H. Litchfield was the 12th chancellor. The Graduate School of Public and International Affairs opened, and until his retirement in July, Dr. Albert Quick was the university registrar. Earlier in the year, Dr. Quick had come to Homestead Senior High School, now known as Steel Valley High, to interview the top students to award one of us a University of Pittsburgh honor scholarship. Now, Dr. Quick never gave the scholarship to anyone who cried, but one of his favorite strategies was to embarrass students, hoping to reduce them to tears. He was attacking me about the spelling of my name when he looked at my SAT scores and immediately started talking about what I could expect when I got to Pitt. He seemed quite pleased that I wanted to be an engineer. I found out later that I had the second highest math SAT score in the country that year. And that I was a National Merit Scholar. I graduated first in my high school class, but that year, the valedictory message was given by the senior class president, who was a white male. It seems that 1957 was a year in which the time had come for many things. The time had come for the space age, the civil rights movement, and even female engineers at Pitt. So on September 3rd, 1957, I entered the University of Pittsburgh School of Engineering, Mechanical Engineering Department, Aeronautical option. There were already 2 Caucasian females there, Carolyn Rotter, a sophomore, and Marion Sample, a junior. Now, we all graduated, and I think that there was a female Caucasian graduate from the night program before these 2. So I was probably the 4th female and certainly the first African American female to graduate from Pitt's engineering school. In general, I enjoyed my years at Pitt. College was a rite of passage that I welcomed. I was inducted into Pi Tau Sigma, the honorary mechanical engineering fraternity, and Qua, the women's honorary science sorority, my first year of eligibility. However, the culture at Pitt was quite different then from what it is today. During 1957 to 1961, my years at Pitt, I had 1 female instructor, Miss Jean Teets, for differential equations, and I heard the term girl used many times in a condescending or distasteful manner. Because of civil rights advances, racial discrimination was probably not illegal, but it was at least socially unacceptable, whereas gender bashing was not. In 1957, right at the end of the high-level bridge, now known as the Homestead-Grays Bridge, there was the Mesta Machine Company, one of the top 500 American companies at the time. Each year, Mesta awarded a scholarship to a mechanical engineering student entering Pitt. I received a letter from Pitt stating that because I had the best academic record of the incoming freshmen, I was receiving the Mesta scholarship. My honor scholarship would be replaced with the Mesta scholarship, which was much better. It paid full tuition, books, and a living allowance. But within a week, I received another letter from Pitt stating that Mesta reserved the right to approve the recipient, and because girls didn't finish engineering school, they chose to give it to a male. My honor scholarship was reinstated, and I had most of my classes with a young man who bragged about the great scholarship that he had gotten from Mesta. And the Society of Women Engineers, however, awarded me a scholarship that paid the other half of Pitt's tuition. During freshman orientation, we were told that we could choose to take either physical education or ROTC. When the man in charge called Arrington, I said ROTC, and he said, girls can't take ROTC. And I think that was the rule for the Air Force ROTC until about 1979. Now, as a girl at Homeville Junior High School, I took 2 semesters of home economics consisting of cooking and sewing, while the males took shop and mechanical drawing. As a freshman at Pitt, I had to take engineering drawing, and cooking and sewing had given me no preparation. The first day of class, the instructor told me that I would never be able to draw because my fingernails were too long, and I would never be an engineer because other girls had started, but none had ever finished engineering. Well, I was used to doing everything with long fingernails, and in a couple of weeks, with a lot of practice, I was a pretty good drawer and an excellent letterer. One day, I was late to drawing class. The assignment was to draw a machine that had an appendage consisting of a right circular cylinder sliced at an angle by a plane. When I turned the drawing in the next week, the instructor looked at me in surprise. Before I had arrived at class the week before, he had told the class to cut the drawing off below the slice in the cylinder because we didn't know how to determine the appropriate projection. But I had used analytic geometry to calculate the correct ellipse. I had that instructor for thermodynamics and maybe one or two other courses, and he never doubted me after that. Now, in the film, Katherine Goebel was chosen for her appointment in the Space Task Group because of her proficiency with analytic geometry. When it was near time for graduation, I tried to find out my class rank, and I was told that girls are not ranked in the School of Engineering. You know, girls were very limited in those days. I was able to succeed academically with the curriculum, but all I could do was adapt to the culture. It was a culture that often made me feel isolated and ignored. In my engineering courses, I had no one to work with and no one to talk to. I guess it's called marginalization, and that, above all things, was what I sincerely hoped that no one after me would have to experience. I know that this is what Katherine felt while working in that task group. When I graduated in 1961, I went to work at the Foreign Technology Division at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base near Dayton, Ohio, the first female engineer in that position. Looking back now, I can see the progress in the fact that Mr. Joseph I. Concha, a Mexican-American, was the chief of the performance branch at FTD, and he hired me, an African-American female, as an aerospace engineer. This is reminiscent of the situation with Mary Jackson and her boss in this film, Hidden Figures. In the performance branch, our role was reconnaissance analysis. Perhaps you've heard of Francis Gary Powers and the U-2 spy plane incident in 1960. With information on general characteristics provided by a spy plane, we at FTD would work backwards to predict specific performance characteristics of foreign, mostly Soviet aircraft. Now, this is the same approach used by the engineers in the film to determine the go, no-go position for John Glenn's vehicle in the film. You know, I have to say that I cannot point to any discrimination that I suffered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. In 1974, I became the 17th African-American female to earn a doctorate in mathematics, and I returned to Pitt as a mathematics professor. Now, I saw many females in Benedum Hall, which had replaced Old Engineering Hall in housing the School of Engineering. I had some females in my scientific calculus and differential equation courses, and I saw females in the computer labs working on projects with other students, male and female. So I thought, this is marvelous. Everything is on the right track now. Well, in those days, I dressed impeccably for work, wearing suits and heels every day, just as depicted in the movie. One day, I was in the chemistry building waiting for an elevator when two white males in shorts and sandals came in. They didn't seem to see me as they began talking, and one spilled his coffee. He said, "Oh my, I guess we'll have to call a janitor to clean that up." Then they looked at me, and one of them said, "Oh, the maid is already here." Well, I was furious, and I told them that they looked more like janitors than I looked like a maid. And you'll see that a similar incident happens to Katherine Goebel in this film. I have even had the experience of having to check the calculations of the IBM computer. However, my experience was quite different from that of Katherine. In general, attitudes and experiences in STEM positions have improved, and certainly this is what the women in the film experienced as they developed their careers at NASA. In viewing the film, there were times when I wondered how certain things could be. Human computers at a time when we were using IBMs at Wright Pat, and we in the performance branch all knew Fortran already. Women not allowed security clearances at a time when I had a top secret clearance. Segregated restrooms. Then I read that some historical facts in the film were altered, especially the timeline was moved forward for the sake of the film. I know that the last scene in this movie showing Mary Jackson in a cap and gown is misleading, for she took the graduate courses in engineering, but she did not earn the degree. In evaluating the statement that she was the first African-American female aeronautical engineer, I realized that I distinguish between the term aeronautical engineer as a job title or as an earned degree. I have no doubt that in 1958, Mary Jackson was the first African-American female employed as an aeronautical engineer. But as an African-American female mathematician and engineer, I wonder how one establishes priority for situations in those days. I know of extensive research by a colleague at Montclair State University that established me as the 17th African-American female to earn a doctorate in mathematics. I would like to know, though, where I rank among the African-American females who have earned degrees in aeronautical or aerospace engineering. Now, I have contacted the National Archives in St. Louis to see if they can help me with my determining what I'd like to know there. Also, I think I'd have to say that if I had known that NASA would soon accept female astronauts, I would have remained in engineering. And see if you can spot a reference like that to Katherine in the movie when you watch it. Knowing my feelings, my daughter Karen, who is with me this evening, got me an application for the 1985 Teacher in Space project. I started to plan a space project with the engineering department at Pitt, but acknowledging that they were looking for a true public school teacher, not a frustrated astronaut, I did not submit that application. And I know you can imagine how I felt on January 28, 1986, when the shuttle Challenger exploded 73 seconds after takeoff and Krista McAuliffe was killed. As the first African-American female graduate of the University of Pittsburgh School of Engineering in 1961, I did not have a role model. Certainly, I wish that I had known about Katherine Johnson when I was a student at Pitt, or even when I worked as an aerospace engineer at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Hearing of her 100th birthday last August heightened my interest in meeting her. I have made contact with NASA and her lawyers about the possibility of a meeting or some other form of contact with Katherine Johnson. They are very careful of her and what she engages in at NASA, and I guess that's understandably so. Now, the protagonists in this movie, Hidden Figures, were all mathematicians with earned bachelor degrees in mathematics. 2 worked also as engineers and 1 as a computer scientist. All of them worked as human computers at NASA. So mathematics and physics provide an excellent background for most STEM endeavors. My advice to young people, especially females and minorities who wish to pursue a STEM career, is this. You are going to encounter curriculum, culture, and community. You must be able to master the curriculum. You should challenge the culture, and by all means, embrace the community. You will need and welcome the support of those who know you and wish you well. And I have many people just like that, my community, who are with me this evening. Thank you.